Hello and welcome to What Makes a Difference. And today we are delighted to have Charles McKinney. Charles is a US Navy veteran and he's had a long and distinguished career in the US Navy. He's now resettled over in the United Kingdom and he helps veterans, servicemen, women and transitioning from service to civilian life.
We met you at an event in Bristol, Charles, and we had a really interesting conversation.
That's right.
Stands round about transition experience. And at that point, we thought it would be really good to get Charles to come and join us because what we wanted to explore was, I suppose, the transitioning from the military to civilian life from almost like the American perspective, because you've kind of got a foot in both camps now. You've seen all elements. We thought that'll be a really cool conversation to have. So thank you very much and welcome.
Well, thank you both for inviting me on. It's a pleasure to be here. And I remember that conversation well down in Bristol. It was a great start. Of course, with any event like that, there's never enough time to go through all elements and all points that you could talk about. So this is a great opportunity to catch back up.
Yeah, because you were a child of the US Navy, weren't you?
I was. I was part of the US Navy for 28 years. And I was fortunate enough to be able to have my final tour with the Royal Navy down in Portsmouth with the UK striking forces there as a maritime planner and maritime aviation staff member for the Admiral. And that was a great tour. I learned a lot, and it was great being part of, from my perspective, a foreign service. It was the first time I had done that. I'd had a couple of tours with NATO before, but that's pretty much everyone having a foreign tour, jammed together in a command. But this was great perspective and being immersed within that command and with those service members, both the Royal Navy and the Royal Marines actually were on the battle staff. And we had a few members from other nations as well, and a representative from the British Army, and actually a team from the Royal Air Force. So it was completely a joint command under the Royal Navy banner down there, and it was a great time. And as that was my final tour in my Navy, I went through the transition process to exit service here in the UK. So I didn't go back to the US to do that. And so I had to navigate all of that pretty much, for the most part, on my own with some support, but not resident support, if you will. There wasn't an office nearby that I could go to. Everything was far, far away, either in London or in another country like Belgium or Italy for my administrative resources. And then decided to remain, and that's a whole other story that we can get into, to remain in the United Kingdom and specifically England, and go through the rest of, it's still ongoing transition really, because it's only been 1 year since I left service, and get settled here.
So there's quite a few threads there. And I'm wondering, Rich, if you were thinking the same, because one of the things that Rich and I were talking about before you joined us, Charles, was the difference between that transition experience for the US compared to the UK in terms of the mindset. Because I think my understanding is there's much more of a stress and benefit in terms of the US, so that it's almost kind of like the US military is a means to achieve your education goals as well. So there's a higher proportion there that are almost starting off their military career with the next step already in mind. And I wondered if that was your experience.
My personal experience, it's kind of mixed, I will say. And I'm going to do my best to not put words in anyone else's mouth or thoughts in anyone else's mind. I'll talk about my personal experience for the type of work that I did in the US Navy, which was naval aviation. I was an aviator and a pilot that had specific requirements before even joining service. So I had a lot of regimented educational requirements to even to complete before joining. From the perspective of those who don't have the same kind of requirements to join service, there are a lot of opportunities, and that is stated. And some people actually join the service in order to have access to those sorts of resources, because it's great. If I were a recruiter for the U.S. military in my country, I would definitely highlight the fact that once you're in the military and you've reached a certain point with your progression in your specific mission category, let's say you're trained up and you're fully able to deploy and do what you're there to do for the military, then you can start to qualify for programs such as tuition assistance. And if you qualify for those, which it's not that hard to do once you've achieved your training goals in the outset, then you can, on your own time, go to school and earn certificates, diplomas, even degrees, all with this tuition assistance program, because you're in that position of serving the country and you're fully trained to do so. Then you can reap those benefits while you're in service. Yeah. Not everybody takes advantage of that, but it's a good program.
Yeah, we have a similar kind of thing where the MOD will pay for educational attainment as long as it's like a level 3 qualification or above. So that's equivalent of like an A level up to obviously degree level and beyond. Yes. So that kind of equivalent. But again, yeah, it's one is knowing about those programs, 2 is getting on them, and 3 is getting actual time and people to support you with those programs as well. Because sometimes you can find that can be quite awkward.
Yes, yeah. No, that's very correct. And I will say it's good to get a mentor up front. That's another thread, if you will. But mentorship is key. And if those who enter service look for mentors, and those who are already in service know that it's up to them to mentor those who just came in, so you've got that symbiotic relationship there. Then people will know earlier on and be able to take advantage of those before it's too late. And in some regards, you can say it's never too late to start. Absolutely, sure. Never too late to start to learn. Again, because we're always learning anyway. But at the same time, some programs have expiration dates, or you can only take advantage of them while you're in service. And some people get too close to leaving service before they start. So that may be considered kind of too late because you won't be able to complete before you leave. Mm-hmm. But it's definitely, like you said, a program that helps you out with the educational fulfillment when you begin, right before you end.
Yeah. What similarities or differences do you notice between the US Navy and Royal Navy?
Wow. Well, the similarities are almost boundless or endless. It's, both highly professional organizations, both very dedicated to their service, very highly knowledgeable, highly skilled, cutting edge with technology, how the staffs are managed, training, those kinds of things, that area. So when you think of Royal Navy and the United States Navy, it's how do you put this? There's already a high level of quality associated with that, as far as a wartime element, if you will. Mm-hmm. They're known to be able to get the job done, right? Where we have differences are mainly cultural. They're 2 different countries, separated by a common language. We all know that. When I joined the command in Portsmouth, I had a steep learning curve with use of language and tone and we'll say inference, implication, those types of things. Had to get there. We had to get used to that, and then I had to get used to that. And that was just being in England's side. Then there was the depth of Royal Navy speak, which I believe is commonly called Jack speak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there's a book on it, and I never got my hands on the book. It was more like on the job training, which was good, and because I was immersed in office with them. Did take a little bit of a hit because when I arrived, it was in the middle of the COVID time, and we had some restrictions as far as distances, those kinds of things, how many people could be in the office and whatnot. But it was still a great experience. Other differences are pretty minor, types of equipment, protocols, traditions. Actually, traditions, a lot of them are actually the same because many traditions in my Navy, come from the Royal Navy. Mm-hmm. Many, in fact, that's from our beginning. It was, copy and paste, and then onward with our own kind of, flavor to it. But yeah.
I'd like to circle back to what you said about that highly trained, highly proficient organization, which is then really useful for employers, isn't it? So when guys are leaving the forces, military service, employers should be looking for these guys and girls to then take on and just take into that transition to civilian life and employment.
Yes. And I'm always careful to caveat that with just because a person is a military veteran doesn't mean they're the greatest thing since
absolutely
read every single one. Check that block and then we'll move on. But what I will say is every single person who has entered and gone through any length of service, because most of it is all up front, has already committed to something that could possibly kill them. They are dedicated to their, not just the nation, but the organization. They're dedicated to, in our case, our shipmates. So everyone else in the organization, then to their unit, to their team, to themselves for self-improvement. They have a sense of honor because of the type of service, being military, and steeped in great tradition as such. Courage, not just the physical, mental courage, strength to go forth with that. We already discussed the commitment, highly trainable because they've basically taken on a new line of work that is not easy, learned all of the critical steps to it, become professionals, if you will, gone through apprenticeships in their areas, and come out as highly proficient in those levels, and then they continue to learn and grow and become experts, or if you don't like that word, highly specialized and skilled and experienced in those areas, whether it's navigation or training or journalism or ordnance handling. Of course, there are a wealth of skills that you can choose from in the military. Those people are also comfortable with change. Not everything is cookie cutter in the military. Things can change in a matter of hours or minutes, and there's one plan, but you have to be ready to be flexible and adapt to a different plan, a new way of doing business, and that could happen instantaneously because our business is war and the enemy gets a vote.
Absolutely. It's the old saying, is that no plan survives the first contact.
No, it doesn't. You just you try to get as prepared as possible, thinking of any eventuality and based on the risks and threats that are around. And in the business world, you do the same. We would do the same thing. You have a project, you prepare for that, you take into account all of the factors present, all of the stakeholders, what their motivations are, what the end result should be, what it's been directed to be, and then you look at what could derail that, and then you try to put in controls to make sure that if those derailments are emerging, that they don't happen. They're softened or turned into opportunities to actually do something better or go in a different direction and still come into the same output. That's what you gain. I mean, a veteran who's come through all of that, gotten all those kinds of experience, it has that mental toughness, that maturity. So when they do go through their transition and they enter the civilian realm for industry, they don't have to be trained into that. They don't need to gain that kind of experience. And they're actually, because of the situations and experiences that they've gained, situations that they could be put into during their military time, could be leaps and bounds ahead of their age cohort, if you will, in industry, just because of that. I mean, I could go on. There are so many other attributes, but I think you get the picture. Yeah.
Well, while you were both talking, a thought occurred to me, sometimes happens. And that was round about the fact that one of the stereotypes sometimes that you get thrown out about the military is, oh, they're all robotic. But it strikes me that actually a military career is the ultimate training ground and possibly the primary training, the initial training ground for agile mindset. Because everything is done with a big top line goal in mind, but almost with short sprint type mindset, knowing that you're going to have to adapt and change to keep that top line goal in your sights, but without necessarily always having the capacity for the detail of that and the logical progression. You're just going to have to know that you're going to have to pick the next logical step toward that takes you closer, go for that and keep going that way. So ultimately it's agile, isn't it? It's agile thinking in play long before agile was a thing.
True. In my opinion, true. And why? Because you've got this organization of highly trained people who know exactly what they need to do to accomplish the mission, right? And the good thing about it is there is structure. There's loads of structure in military. So it gives everyone the ability to make decisions right away because they already have in their mind, we've been institutionalized to know where things will go wrong, where things will gain benefit, and the limits of our equipment, so that the question of why is answered up front in the training, so that you have each individual capable of making quick decisions in the moment with their craft in order to avoid the problems and without having to go back and forth to leadership because they already know, right? And if they do not know, then the leadership is right there. And it's really quick circle because we have what's called decentralized command. For example, imagine a ship and all of its functions and all of the people there that need to get those functions going. It's a 24-hour operation, and it's not always monitored by the commander of the ship. Well, at the same time, the ship is off on its own with its set of orders. The higher headquarters, they don't have to always be back and forth communicating about every little detail, every little thing, because the decentralized command of that ship, they know what they need to do, and they have the expertise on board to be able to handle the local problems, if you will, and they just handle them. Yeah. But I think you're right. That agile mindset is resident already.
That means then within that organization, there's a high level of trust. So the commander's got to trust his subordinates, and the subordinates have got to trust their teammates to get that job done at the right time and right place.
Yes.
No matter what's going on around them.
Yes. And then in the military, when you realize that, and this is, I guess, the transition from junior civilian into the military when you first join service, one thing you do get pretty quickly in your mind is that trust. So later on, it's implicit. It's, okay, you're part of the team. You're already part of this circle of trust, and that's boxes checked. Why? Because every person depends on the other to get their job done. You know, when you're in an area, and I know I don't want to overuse this comparison, but when you're in a job where it can be life and death, in a short amount of time, just not just because of war and enemies and those kinds of things, but the machinery, the equipment, the environment. It's very dangerous. You have to rely on everyone to do their job correctly. So everyone is thinking in their mind, okay, I have to rely on you and you have to rely on me. So I need to do my job efficiently, safely, and correctly to the standard. And everyone's got that whole mindset, right? And then if something does go wrong, the military is good at owning up. Okay, looking back, let's do our debrief. Looking back, I think I made a mistake here because I didn't wait long enough before flipping that switch or whatever it is. And then through that investigative process, figure out how to make the standard better, make the procedures better in order to avoid those things happening again. So yeah, the trust is there.
So Rich and I were having a conversation about this yesterday, and I was talking about the crisis management processes that sometimes most businesses have. And that the standard procedure would be that you would, so for instance, one of the businesses I worked within, you would have, as a senior manager, you would be aware of the fact that there would be like a blue team, an amber team, and a red team. And there would be layers of escalation depending on, and each layer had their scope of operation. So in this sort of situation, if this is the financial impact, if this is the people impact, if this is the infrastructure impact, then this is the level it sits at. So you knew which level had to be instigated as almost like the command layer. Mm-hmm. And you would know that each of those layers, once in play, would have specific roles and jobs. However, if you were outside of that leadership structure, you had no clue that existed. And I'm wondering if that's almost like a critical difference between the military, and that everybody is enabled to have at least a core understanding of almost that emergency problem solving. What do you do in this situation when it's all gone horribly wrong, right? What do you do? Whereas in most businesses, that knowledge is kept at very specific layers, and that almost responsive problem solving, you'll be taught emergency evacuations and that sort of stuff. Yeah, everybody is, but not the problem solving part, not the take responsibility and what do you do next part. And that's what sets the military apart, is that responsibility element along with that this is how you respond in that situation.
I can see that. I'm unaware of the structure that you mentioned there for in the business world. Just because I haven't been exposed to it. So it's insightful for me. You're correct that, from my experience, doesn't exist. I'm trying to think of a way it would, and the one thing that I can think of is chain of command, which is a conversation actually that probably is worth having. In this instance, from my experience in the military, everyone has emergency procedures, and they're not kept secret. Like, I could know what your procedures are, and it's probably a good thing, so that, to know as many as possible. Why? Because we also do cross training, and just to make sure that we have redundancy. That's a very big thing in the military, is redundancy. Mm-hmm. So if one thing fails, another thing will come and pick it up. If a hydraulic system fails, well, you have a hydraulic system 2, which will turn on and work in its place until you repair hydraulic system 1. If you have a casualty on a ship, everybody is trained in what's called damage control, which is kind of like emergency procedures, which is kind of like that problem-solving element. Not everyone does the exact same thing for damage control. You'll have people that can put out fires. You'll have people that can repair electronics. And they'll have those specialties, and they'll go off and do those. But it's a team effort, and it's coordinated by a center. And that's where the chain of command comes in, where the decision making will go back to a central agency in that area, just to get the emergency under control as quickly and efficiently as possible. Because it's a time element, you don't want to have a team of 4 people in a dark passage with smoke fighting a fire, and then another one erupts somewhere else, deciding which one is the more important one to get. They'll be notified immediately by their team who knows, okay, yes, you're putting out this fire, and that's important. Continue to do that, but get somebody else on another fire. Why? Because if it spreads, it then gets close to the ammunition, and that's really bad. For example. So some of the larger decision making will happen at the center for the damage control, but locally, oh yeah, absolutely, they still can retain that quick decision making capability in order to solve those problems really, really quickly. Yeah. And again, the redundancy part, it's not kept a secret. If people need help, they can call from other sections to come in who will be trained as the redundant measure for that.
So that really does come back to that trust thing that you were saying, Rich, and that capacity to act, which really counteracts that belief of robotic, because it's far from the truth.
Well, and again, it's going back to what Charles was saying about structure. So in the field army, and everybody will know where everybody's bit of kit is, because you don't be going through somebody's webbing and looking for somebody's first field dressing if they've been hit. You don't be going around looking for, like dog tags and whatever else if somebody's, on death's doorstep, as it were, in the extreme end of things. So everybody knows where everything is. So then that leads to that higher structure, but with that trust as well, they'd be able to apply those things to those people as well, if and when they need it.
Yep, exactly. Totally agreed.
Isn't that also because the structure that is put into play, bloody hell, does it make sense? There's sound, justifiable logic behind every single piece of structure that says this isn't just because we're having a bit of a whim and we thought that would be really fun and let's do that. Let's see if we can get everybody to do the same thing. There is a sound, justifiable, logical reason which is explainable to say, this is why you do it this way, and if you don't, this is what happens. Let's avoid the if you don't scenario. And again, that's sometimes missing in a lot of business communication. It becomes less practical driven. It feels more fashion trend. And the communication within the organization in terms of why and what the achievement is sometimes just does not hit the same level or standard that you would potentially get within a military environment. I think there's a lot to be learned there.
Yes. You just said a key word, communication. If I were to look at a difference between what I see and also have to imagine about the business world, out in industry as a difference from being in the military, I would say that the military does well with communication. When a decision is made, when orders come out, we have a message system and everybody is privy to it, and messages go out from the very top of the organization. I'm talking the 4-star admiral who is over the entire United States Navy for us. If he or she puts out a notice or an order for the entire Navy, it goes out in a message, and every single member, all hundreds of thousands of us, have access to that message. And in fact, we're required to read them. Messages that come out on a daily basis, be 10, 20, however many, go on an all read board, and that's part of your job during the day, is to pull those messages up, read them, understand them. If you have questions, ask them, and they're pretty good at putting in all the contact information for people who are dealing with those specific issues. In addition to that, many leaders will take it upon themselves to grab those word boards, go through them, and actually brief their teams on the messages, and then signpost them to where the messages are. Nowadays, things are less printed out; they're all on computer, and the messages are accessible through your emails, your work email accounts. So there's really even less of an excuse. You can pull it up right away and have access to them, copy, print, whatever. But yeah, communication is key. Getting that message out right away, so that everyone knows. And the United States Marine Corps does a really good job of it. As soon as the commandant of the Marine Corps puts out an order, it's really within like probably hours that every single Marine knows exactly what the commandant said. Yeah.
Yeah. And that also goes well, Charles, would be back in the day, you'd be given the orders of when to parade, what you're doing that day, almost what to wear, almost what time to eat.
Absolutely.
What duties you've got and what's expected of you during that day. And as you say, all those orders, what comes out from the commander, his brief, his intent.
Yep. Because one of the things about the military that keeps us close knit and has that trust, is uniformity. It's not just for parades and decorations and make us look good. It's because we have to be lockstep with one another in what we do in our lives. And no kidding, you are absolutely correct. Those messages will tell you which way to tie your shoelaces. So everybody has the exact same information, does the exact same procedure, and the end goal is that when you really need that kind of trust and precision and uniformity and standardization, it's there on call. You don't even have to ask for it because it's already ingrained. When you're in a firefight, everyone knows exactly what to do. Yes. Because that's the standard.
But then that's a problem, isn't it? When people transition from the forces or uniformed services, so you can include the police, fire brigade, medical professions and everything else, there's so much ambiguity in grey space, there's so much so much uncertainty with that transition to civilian street. You're not sure where you kind of land your feet. You lost your sea legs, as it were.
In a way, yes.
Yeah.
It's definitely can be what we call culture shock, right?
Yeah.
And it could take, for some people, days, some others weeks, months, some years really to get through that. And that's where we have some people that can really struggle, on the outside, life after the military during the transition, because they're used to that kind of environment, that military culture. And when they get to outside where it doesn't exist or it's very different, they have that shock, and maybe it's too much. And that could be based on their length of time in the military. It could be based on their what they did in the military, their personality, how they learn. All kinds of things pop into that. But it's one of those things that military service members who leave, become veterans, ex-service members, can help those organizations by actually asking those questions of why. And that's one of the things that I bring up about veterans as a strength to any business or organization that brings them in, is that usually you're going to get someone who has that questioning attitude and gives you that second set of eyes, to look at how you do processes and ask those questions. Why are you doing that? Because one thing that most military members and ex-service members dislike is the answer, well, we've always done it that way. Well, then you're probably lagging behind, and something's not right, and maybe there's a better way to do it, more safe way to do it, more expeditious way to do it, or a more profitable way to do it. And there you go. Now you're talking money, because the old ways are old ways for a reason. Usually, to survive, you must evolve, you must adapt and overcome, and maybe renew, recapitalize, all those kinds of things, refresh, in order to better succeed, to keep going forward by remaining stagnant.
So in terms of that culture change then, Charles, that transition process, because that's really what Rich and I set up, what makes the difference to do, was to support that transition, not from a finding a job or house standpoint, but navigating the different thinking patterns and finding your place in a different community again, in terms of who you anchor to, how you create your community around about you, because that has a massive, massive difference. Can be really impactful. That transition process, I suppose, in your experiences, what were the biggest challenges with that?
Wow, I had a lot of challenges personally, and many are obvious. Okay, I'm U.S. service member, ex-U.S. service member, American citizen, who left service in a different country than his own, and also chose to remain in that country. So my transition was filled with question marks, a lot of ambiguity, unfamiliarity. It probably sounds like a champion statement for those who are out there professing, oh, do hard things and step out of your comfort zone, and that's how you'll grow. Well, I'm well there. This is not a comfortable place to be. But then again, a life of military service and also being a military child, my father was in the military. My whole life has been about change and ambiguity and turning uncomfortable into normal, going with new normals, new normal. What a nice concept that is. That's been my life. I mean, could you imagine growing up and every couple of years you're the new kid in the school again, right? And new friends that you have to make, you have to, restart, basically. Not reinvent yourself, but I mean, just start over. So it's been a process of starting over, leave school, starting over again, university, starting over again, enter service, starting over again. Each level of promotion or advancement, starting over. Every move, every new job, starting over. Now I'm here, and it's kind of again starting over. So for me, it's almost like a ambiguous, but a cheat because I'm used to ambiguity.
Mm-hmm.
So that was that's my transition. Go ahead.
Do you think maybe the difference there is it's easy enough to trot out the words, oh, well, just take yourself out the comfort zone and that's where you'll grow and you'll learn. However, when most of the world does that doesn't come from a military background, when they're out of their comfort zone, moving out of the comfort zone might be in one or two things. It might be a new skill or a new location. However, when you're looking at transitions like a career change from the military to civilian life, it's not just one thing. It's everything. Absolutely everything. And taking yourself out of your comfort zone in one thing can be, yeah, great. Go for it. It'll be challenging. It'll be different. There'll be things you'll learn about yourself. But when you roll that over into the grand scheme of things where you're doing that for absolutely everything, every aspect of your life, as you have known it for a prolonged period of time, then it takes that advice of, well, just take yourself out the comfort zone and kind of puts it in a different category.
It does. And I wouldn't blame any service member during their transition for saying that's a bunch of malarkey, chopped grass. It really thanks for telling me I need to step out of my comfort zone. Very cynical, because you hit the nail on the head. When you're in the service, there's a difference between being in the service, from my perspective, and being out of service. Just a few things, right? You don't have to worry about what to wear because it's been designated and been provided to you. It's whatever you're doing requires uniform A. Okay, I'm in uniform A. I have all the pieces. I know what they're supposed to look like. I know how they're supposed to be worn. Done. You have a couple of different sets of those different uniforms, and you use them whenever it's required, and the requirement. The job, you've been trained in it. Well, you've got the requirement done. Little things like maybe banking, maybe a little personal, but still you have an office that takes care of all that administration. So it's not something you really have to worry about. It's automatic. Really, eating daily, your shop. Do you really have to do it? Some people don't, because you have a mess, or a wardroom, or a facility, a dining facility where there are posted times, and you show up at those times, and you go through the line and you get your food. Transportation, you need to be in that location for your work, you will be transported there. There are a lot of things that can be taken for granted when you're in the military service, because they are. When you leave the military service, there are many things that you're flat on your own for. It's pretty much everything, really. And the transition can be brutal, especially if it happens in short order. And I know, so timing is a very key factor, and the time it takes is very crucial for adjustment. My transition, I knew when it was going to happen. I knew when it was going to happen years before it happened. I could calculate it out. I knew that when I moved to the United Kingdom for work with the Royal Navy, that was my last tour, and I knew exactly what date would be my final one, so I could begin preparing, years out, with thinking about these things, with reaching out to people who've done it before, getting the checklists and the look out for this. You might want to read this, all those kinds of things. And we have a lot of resources in the U.S. military. Now there are a lot of online, so many websites that you can go to and read and fill out forms and find out information and get prepared for it, whether it's getting your medical or dental in order to be transferred to civilian care, whether it's insurances or job searches, trying to get your resume. We have online, trying to think which it's almost like a transcript for your schools or college, but it's really based on your service. So you can download a file that has, from the beginning of your service, all the courses you've taken, all your qualifications, all of those kinds of things, so that you can have a look at it and use that to help you build a resume. We have evaluations and fitness reports written on us that we can pull, that have basically all the highlights of our career. If you've gotten any awards, those have all been written up, right? You can pull those offline and get copies and use those. There are a lot of resources there for us to dive into, and there are a lot of maybe organizations, you might call them charities here, that specialize in the transition. And we also have a requirement that's probably born out of a lot of veterans becoming homeless in the United States. We have programs that are mandatory before you can leave service. Mm-hmm. You must complete them, including a week-long course where it's Transition Assistance Program, TAP for short, where you must go through those days with a counselor and specific briefers and Department of Labor that talk about a myriad of areas for that transition. And you must do it within the last year, 18 months of your service, so they know that you are at least advised of how to go about your transition. But at a certain point, it's upon the member to take ownership of their transition and work through it, set themselves up for success. No one's going to hold their hand and give it to them, right? And you see that a lot here. I have not experienced leaving the Royal Forces service, but I have seen some people go through it, and I'm trying my best to help anybody here in the UK going through it with my experiences and what I've learned through also trying to tap into those resources here. Because being a part of the Royal Navy's command in Portsmouth, I was afforded some credentialing, which allows me to also partake of some of those services, like CTP, it's called career transfer.
Yeah, that's simply changing over, yeah.
So I think that's another that's the example here of a requirement that service leavers must attend and
well, it's advised that they go. It's not necessary. But yeah,
okay.
I think the main difference between what you're saying and what we get is, so you go through that transition process, and generally it's a year long. Obviously, people do get medic discharged, or they get kicked out for drug abuse or whatever it is. So there's differences there, on terms of service. So the CTP, all that concentration is on is what training programs or training providers there are, a bit about housing, a bit about finance, and a bit about writing a CV, and then looking for work. There's none of that provision for your mental well-being. There's none of that provision for how to make and create networks for yourself or build your own community, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's the same concept.
Yeah.
And that's where I mentioned at a certain point, it's up to the the service member.
It is, yeah. And I did read years ago now, somebody who said, similar to what you're saying about that transition, your date you're leaving, is from the moment you join, you should be planning how you leave or when you leave.
Yes.
But most people don't think about it because they think, right, I'm going to stay in this career and I'm going to do this for X number of years. But there's not that thought behind of, I have to leave at some point.
Right. You're absolutely correct there. And it's something that I've thought about. I've been asked the question before, how do you do it? And there are probably some touch points throughout the career where people should be reminded, maybe through face-to-face presentation of like maybe a shock. You get service members who have, as you say, been discharged in short order, where all of a sudden they have 1 month, 2 months, whatever, and then they're out of the service. So they have literally zero time to prepare in leaving. And if they're aware of those kinds of worst case scenarios, right, then the fire is lit with, hey, I think I need to prepare for that just in case. But then plan for of course, the long haul. If some people really, they want a career, that's what they join the military for, is to do that service. And they think, hey, I'm going to do this for 10, 15, 20, 30 years. That's what I want to do. And they're not looking for it being upended, but it can happen, right? And there are things like you just mentioned, networking. That's never, that's something that you can never do too early. Yeah. And I think people, they hear that word and they have something, an image pops up in their mind immediately of being in some kind of a forced, gathering in a room, and you're there with your business attire and your little resume or your business card, or now you can do like a little QR codes and trade information, and then trying to have a conversation with somebody that you've never met before and you don't know what to talk about. And it's one of those uncomfortable things.
Yeah. Well, if you hadn't done the networking, Charles, we would have never met, would we? We would be having these wonderful conversations.
Absolutely. And networking, it's almost like a bad word for some reason. For some people, it's really just meeting new people.
Yeah.
All it is, you just meet new people. How did you make friends? Well, you met new people, right? And you had some interests and you shared them and you got to know them, and now you're friends. Well, that's networking. It doesn't have to be some kind of, knife clawing, shark eating, world of, oh, I need to meet this person so I can get an in this company and, make it to the top. Gosh, no, I wish that would go away and people would just network to meet people.
Joy of it?
Just meet people.
But I also think, though, that networking sometimes, it should be almost like a critical skill for everyone, because sometimes you underestimate how long it's actually going to take to build that network. And it doesn't happen overnight. And actually, the easiest way to build it is slowly but consistently.
That's right.
Not trying to suddenly go, okay, I have no network now, I had to create one, so therefore for the next 3 months I'm going to do nothing but networking events, because there's no faster way to end up totally burnt out and utterly exhausted than to be so intense about an activity. Whereas
Right.
if it's almost that's part of that career transition process is start that at the very first opportunity and keep it going throughout your career. Pay attention to it because that's going to pay dividends later on.
It will. In the network that I have, and I'll throw this out that I do use LinkedIn. Have been using it quite a bit in the last couple of years. Within my LinkedIn network, it's professed to begin meeting people early. Talk to, and you can be intentional. Sure, it's not just about meeting people and making friends. You can be intentional in that if you have an area of work or an interest that you have, you can look specifically for those people and be intentional in the type of network you build. That's fine as well. But it's best to start early and non-transactional and just build up that reputation and your brand, because whether you are intentional about creating a brand or not, it will develop through your interaction with the small network you build. You don't have to know how to network, because that's another fear. Oh, I don't know how to network. Well, just break the ice. Just start, and then at a certain point, you'll get the hang of it. And it's really something that can be instructed for specifics, like if you really want to be intentional about networking for a specific thing. But in my experience, once you do it consistently, and that's the other thing, you have to be consistent with it. Start and do it consistently by reaching out to people, asking questions, asking for advice, those kinds of things where people are willing to share that information with you. Again, non-transactional, don't ask for anything. Then you'll start to grow it. And then at a certain point, after years and years, like Ali, you mentioned just now, you start early in your career and you just continue to water that garden, that network garden, tend it, care for it. Don't start it and then ignore it and only pop up when you're out of work or need something, because that's another criticism, I guess, something that it's easily recognized if you're jump into a platform like LinkedIn and you make a couple of quick connections and then you just throw up, hey, I'm looking for work, help me. Mm-hmm. It might not go over too well. However, if you start building that association, those connections early on, and just talking about what you do, what you can offer, and how you do it, showing how you're making that service available to others, then you'll have your brand established, even if it's not a huge one, and people will be more apt to helping you out.
There's also other organizations that people can come along to, and that's like the breakfast clubs. That's like community groups. There's a whole host of organizations that people can network live, and then they can get an idea of the experiences that people have had when they've transitioned from service, and in some cases, they might be able to get a job as well.
Absolutely. You never know where a conversation will lead, right, Ali?
Very much, yeah, very much. And what I was going to say as well is that sometimes people get really anxious about using these sort of network platforms because, well, I don't know what to say. What do I do? Well, actually, you don't necessarily always give yourself a break. You don't always have to be the one that's putting out these articles or posts or whatever. Yeah. Comment, find people that you go, I like what you said, and tell them you like what they said. It's as simple as that.
It is.
That's all you have to do, because all that does is it starts to show your preferences, the things that interest you, the things that you like, the things that you agree with. It starts to show your value set. You don't have to be posting 3 and 5 times a week. Just find people that you go, I like what you said, and tell them.
That actually on that platform is one of the first things that you should do, that you work. I mean, the very first thing is when you set up a profile. Personally, I would take some time and really invest in it and make it look like exactly the way you'd want someone else to see it, because that's the first thing that people will do if they see you interacting and they're intrigued, they'll click on your profile and look to see who you are. So set it up the best way you can. Make sure it's verified as best you can, so that you don't look like a scammer or anything like that. And then, just like you said, Ali, I mean, if I put out a post and I kept getting, consistently you popping on there and saying, "Oh, Charles, I like what you said here. It's really intuitive," or something like that. "Thanks for posting," whatever, just anything, as long as it was a comment, that's engagement, and you get seen, and it's consistent, and then you become memorable. And when you become memorable, at a certain point, the person might say, "You know what? Hey, click on your profile and write you a little message. Ali, I see you. Thank you for your engagement with my content. It's been very consistent. I think we should connect." Darn, now you start growing your network. Mm-hmm. And based on what you say, how you say it, you start kind of building your subtle brand as well. Mm-hmm. And you get known for something, whether it's maybe you like gardening, maybe you're in the service, and one day your dream is to have a garden shop, be the local person that people come to for all their stuff. Well, mm-hmm. It starts somewhere.
Yeah.
Right. You can't just pop out of the military and then start doing what, I mean, you can. It'll be difficult. It'll be less difficult if you have help, if you know people in the business that you're trying to get into. And that could be anything.
Well, they say, was it like 70% of all jobs are not advertised?
No, they're not.
Yeah.
They're not. Anything that the jobs that I've been, and we can talk about this too. I've been out 1 year. I'm still out there networking and looking and to find what I really, really want to settle down and do. And I'm not scouring job listings anymore. I did, but I don't see what I like, A, and B, I'm learning more from talking to people. And you're right, stuff that isn't advertised are what people are out there networking to find those people that they could find to plug in. They're not posting applications and saying, okay, I think I'm just I'm looking for a specific person, and I'm looking to really gel with that person. So I'm going to throw out a job advert, and I'm really looking forward to doing the work of reading through 100, 500 applications and their resumes to find that one person that I might like. That'll take too much time and energy, and you can, another thing, every conversation is an interview, whether you think it is or it's advertised or not. You're always being evaluated. So take that one out, to the bank, because you can really cash in on it. So if you treat that well, then you could get returns. Because if I'm out looking for a specific person for a job that I haven't advertised, because I don't need to go through all the turmoil, but I know if I go to this network event, it'll be chock-a-block full of ex-military who carry the credentials and already, satisfy all the administrative requirements. Now I'm looking for the person, the fit. So I'll just go and talk face to face to a bunch of people. Then that's where it's gonna count.
Well, I think the other thing is, don't write something off. Always think long term. So a classic example could be, I remember going through a recruitment process with a big company, getting to the final point where I was literally almost waiting for them formalizing the offer, and then it all fell through. Right. Mm-hmm. So I went off and did another contract role. A year later, I get a phone call from the recruiter. You know how you were contracting for about, what's your market situation just now? Are you available? Are you not available? And I was like, well, I'm actually about to be available because the contract I'm on is just about to end. Right. Remember that job that you went for a year ago? They've just contacted me to ask if you're available. I'm like, I will be in a month. And I ended up working for that company for 5 years.
Yep. Always.
One of those ones. Yeah.
Positive engagement. Right. All these events, well, in this last year, I've gone through a lot of job fairs, a lot of online events, networking events. I've gone through interview processes. Every single thing I've done, I've met a lot of great people, and many of them I've connected with, and I maintain connections with them because you never know, right? And then you keep on with that engagement. It's just, and again, you water the network, water the garden, give it the attention, and something will pop up.
Well, I think the thing is that memorability, isn't it? And also how you put yourself across. So that sometimes the job might not be a job until someone occurs to somebody that they've got a problem and you'd be the ideal person to sort it. And now there's a job because they want you to come and help and sort it. And that's how those kind of unadvertised roles happen, because you become a name that they're aware of, that they have some form of connection or collaboration with, even if it is just through comments and articles, that they go, I like what they say, I like the way they comment, I like the way they interact. And that gives them a hint and a flavour of you. So that might be when they start reaching out to you and go, have a chat, fancy a coffee with me? There's something I think I've got that might be of interest to you. And that's where those things come from. That's the power of that network. Yeah.
That's right. You mentioned a really good thing there, problem solving. And that is a lot of times what people are looking for. And sometimes they're not looking for it because they don't know that they have that problem. And that's where kind of the advanced job searching comes in. Something that I've learned along the transition way is if you are someone who is leaving service and you know exactly what you want to do, where you want to do it. Let's say, okay, you want to work for company X because company X does logistics. They supply pharmaceuticals or something like this, and you've always wanted to go to company X so much that you've researched them, right? You know exactly what they do. You know what they've done the last couple of years. You know how much money that they can bring in. You know their main projects, their main streams. You know the key people. You've even looked up the key people online, and you could tell them their own dossier back to them so much. What you've also done is you've researched the company so much that you know where potential problems lie in the domain that you're interested in working, so that when you reach out to these people that you know about for just a casual connection, just to ask a question. Hey, can you tell me some advice? Can you tell me what you do on a daily basis? I'm interested in doing the work that you're doing. Can you tell me more about it? Then later on, as you establish that, you can bring that, and it comes to a position being available. Maybe you've networked into it to being on a short list, or maybe you saw the application. You can articulate a problem that you see and tell them exactly how you can be the one to solve it for them. And that's kind of that advanced, in depth. Yes, I'm really targeting that company and this job at that company. This is how I can do it for you, and I'm the only one who can do it for you. Right? Make yourself the best candidate, and then listing why. Yeah, thank you.
I'm wondering, because I'd love to have a conversation with you about your experiences as growing up in the military, because I think that's a whole different conversation. But I think that's probably a whole different conversation, Charles.
Absolutely. Whenever you like.
So in terms of that transition experience then, first of all, what is it you're actually doing now? Because I think it's really important that everybody knows in terms of what you're doing, because I think that's a powerful support for them too. And the other thing is, what advice would you give them about transition?
So what I'm doing now is I'm working with a company on their program that helps service leavers. And it's sort of freelance work. We'll call it freelance work because I'm available to do other work as well in the same realm. But it's everything starts off with helping service leavers and veterans. And this company started a beta of offering software, which is a workflow management platform online through a large company called Smartsheet. It's in the States, and the company that I'm working with is a reseller of the licenses to other larger companies and individuals and so forth. But it's a great help to service leavers or people getting ready to leave that are in service or recently left, because there's a 3 different streams there of level of transition, to get the familiarity with that platform. Basically, having access to it, to upskill in it, get familiar with it, learn the language of it, and then make themselves more marketable. And it is offered complimentary, the license, to those members in the military who are about to leave service within 6 to 9 months of leaving service, so they can work on it and prepare. And those within 6 months of leaving service. And what they would do is they would fill out a registration form online. I would see it, come in, and facilitate their registration through a couple of different key gates. One is, of course, verifying they are who they say they are, and their leaving date to qualify, and then getting them a set of licenses. And it's actually 3 licenses that we offer to them. So the service member can upskill. If they have a partner, they can upskill, or another family member or friend even. And it's for 12 months, the period of access. And I got on board because the company owner is ex-military as well. He wanted to give back. He was looking for somebody to help him out in doing this. And I will say he found me through LinkedIn, through my content, because he's connected with someone who I was connected with, who probably liked my content. He saw what I was putting out about helping service members and transitioning people and military and ex-military and all that kind of business. And so he reached out with a message, turned into a phone call, turned into a quick meeting, which turned into that opportunity coming to life, and launching that program last November. And so now we've got 7 or 8 months under our belt with that. We've got about 25 people going through the program right now actively, and it's open for many more. And I think if I struggle with anything right now, it's probably visibility for the program, the marketing of it, and actually having service members realize that there's no catch. It's not something for sale, or something that they even requires a lot of their time during a busy time of transition. It's a really great opportunity, and it can only help them in the long run. So that's what I'm working on, and I'll definitely provide you with that information so that it's available. Maybe you can blink on the screen right here. People can go straight to it, and I can help them.
Challenging my editing skills there, Charles.
Yeah, we'll put all that stuff in the show notes.
Yeah, definitely. And then also the other thing I'm doing is, well, while I transition, so I left the service officially the 1st of May in 2023, and by June, a month later, we had packed up our house in Portsmouth and moved it north into Oxfordshire, and that took a few months to get
everything. It's not going to like you saying that's north.
That's north of the South Coast. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, exactly. Everything's relative, right? And
it is. Yeah.
I keep I talk to people. North. So you're in Manchester.
That's not even North Dakota. No, that's like Midlands to Alley, isn't it?
Like, still, there's even more north.
Manchester is the middle.
It's the middle. Oh my goodness!
It's the lower middle.
So
it's definitely not north.
I guess, but okay, north of, I guess, the southernmost one of the South Coast, right? I got in my car and I drove that way.
Yeah,
but only for 2 hours. Yeah, and after getting settled in a couple months, I took this course. So another networking thing. I was networking and talking with one of the recruiters who asked me, "Have you ever heard of Project Recce?" And I thought, no, haven't. Well, they offer a course for pathways into construction, and at that point, I was not one of the people who left service knowing exactly what they were going to do here, because I was under new circumstances, different circumstances. If I were back in the States, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I had a pathway all lined out. I was going to refresh my aviation qualifications and get into airline, something like that, flying again. But that's it's not something I could map well here, we'll say. So again, starting over, right? So I didn't shy away from any opportunity. That's another thing. Another piece of advice I offer to those leaving service, and you've said it yourselves, to not shy away from any opportunity. Anything that comes up, just take a look at it, at least give it its fair share. But at the very least, you'll meet some nice new people who could help you out later on, or you could help them. The door swings both ways. And I thought, well, I do have a degree in civil engineering. I really haven't used it for civil engineering, but it still interests me. So I thought, okay, pathways into construction. Let's do that. In any case, it was a 2-week course for service leavers with others. I'd be in a cohort with them and led by the service leavers. So it's done by a charity called Project Recce CIO, and I'll give you that information as well. And it was a brilliant course. I'll say holistic. It went over all sorts of areas. Wellness, transition, how to be assisted, how to be assisting. Then it touched on the construction industry, gave access to a range of really prolific speakers, as well as members of the industries, captains of the construction industry, where we were able to have mock interviews with them immediately as well. And you could even earn a safety card to enter construction sites. So why not? It was great. It was a really great experience. I learned a lot, connected with everyone there, and was asked later by the team to be an ambassador for them. So, and I was crazed to become an ambassador. Basically, because that for me, that was like a great moment to be more infused into the local what community, I guess. It's being part, because again, American, US Navy in Britain, starting over. How do you do this? Well, you talk to people, get to know people, network, and say yes and help others. Basically, helping others got me to this point. And that's what being an ambassador for Project Recce is. It's helping other service leavers. And I've been asked, of course, to come back onto subsequent runs of the course, Pathways into Construction. And I help them with advertising their platform. They have an online platform as well for construction industry, similar to like a LinkedIn, social platform where people have profiles and they can be more interspersed within the construction community. It's been great, and it's another way to give back, and that's one of the things. Volunteering, giving back, it gets you out there, and you're not only are you helping, and you have those tangible results of helping. You get to meet great people. They know you for, your philanthropy, and you can always be talked about in other circles, because of your character and so forth. Not that that wasn't intentional. That's just a kind of a, side benefit of it all. So and that's what I'm doing right now. Yep.
Excellent.
Fantastic.
Well, thank you very much, Charles.
Thank you.
Have you
It's
got
been
any?
a pleasure.
I was going to say, have you got any couple of key takeaways for people?
Yes. Always good key takeaways are: be genuine, always learn something, be receptive to advice. Anytime you listen to someone speak, it's from them, right? It's not a panacea, right? It's not gonna help everybody in every way. But I will say about 10-20% of what you hear, it's probably a little bit of nugget there that you can take and put into your toolbox to build your own. I might be a little bit geeking out here, but when I was in flying in my squadron and became a detachment officer in charge, basically I could take a crew of people and 2 helicopters and go off to a forward location and work and service the fleet. And basically, what we had was we were instructed to create a binder, and that binder was your officer in charge binder, and you basically filled it with all the good stuff that you learned from other OICs, officers in charge, and your experiences. You jam in all kinds of sheets and procedures, things that would help you out. And I basically likened it to, okay, a Jedi building their own lightsaber, because they're all unique, they're all different, right? It's specialized for the user. And so had that binder, and that was my toolkit, right? For when I led my detachments on those missions. And that's kind of what each service member has to do while they're leaving service. They build their own kind of transition binder, and whatever they find that's useful along the way in their transition, just stuff it in there, And I don't mean it doesn't have to be a real physical binder. I mean, it could be like just a word processing, document on your phone or on your computer. You hear something, throw it in there. You see a nice thing, something that's useful online, screen capture, throw it in there. Organize it however you like, contacts, just, you get the idea. But have something that's yours that you can go back to and that helps you drive forward. Other bit of advice: take care of yourself. Take care of yourself first. A lot of people suffer from burnout, exhaustion, and it's not just physical. It could be mental as well. Some careers are really tough. People have done some extraordinary things in their service. And I was, when I came out of service, I was fortunate, still am fortunate, to be in a position to take time for myself if I need to. And it was good for me, that especially that time when we moved house. It was a few months of really just doing things, getting on my own schedule, getting used to not having to get up in the morning and put on a uniform and go to an office, for 8, 9, whatever, however many hours a day, and do that. It was a new routine I had to get used to. So it was good to kind of sit back, have that time to sit back and think what I needed to do to get through, not get through a day, but make the best use of a day, a week, whatever. And a lot of that for me was time with family, right? So no kidding, if you have the opportunity when you leave service to take a break, take a break. You need it. You really, a lot of people do need that time to kind of reset or resettle themselves personally into their new life, right? Along with that, don't drop the physical fitness. Don't drop the any good eating habits that you had. Sleep, like, no kidding. Get on a routine for sleep. Read up on sleep hygiene and make it work, because that's one of the things that we've suffered with in service is sleep deprivation. We're really good at it. We're really good at pushing to the max getting that 5-hour power nap, right, that you call a good night's sleep, and then getting up and getting back to it, and not taking a nap in between, but trying to work in fizz and all these other kinds of things throughout the day to keep going, and then relying on things like caffeine. That kind of a reset is good for the body, and the results of that good sleep move into how you feel and how you can perform and clarity of mind, and then your transition is just better when you're in that set. So take care of yourself, take care of your family, and I know it's difficult, especially if people don't come out of service and go right into a job. Try to not have that anxiety and just make incremental gains every day. Don't compare yourself to other people. One of the worst things you can do to self-destruct is compare yourself to someone else. The situations are likely 100% different, if not 90% different. You will never be exactly like someone else. What I compare myself to, or who I compare myself to, is myself, but yesterday. Am I better today than I was yesterday? Am I making those steps? Am I continuing to go forward? Because that's my reference. That's all I can compare myself to. I can't look in the other yard and say, well, oh gosh, that grass is greener. It's really not. No, I can't compare. I'll look at mine, what I have, take good stock of my accomplishments, not where I'm lacking. We always look. I mean, it's fine to have a plan to say, I'm here. I want to be here. Fine, you're moving toward that, but you can't ignore what you did back here. Those are accomplishments. Otherwise, you wouldn't be where you are.
Well,
yeah,
a place
go ahead.
of lack according to whom? And I think sometimes we forget that life is a series of changes of direction.
Yes.
A series of this no longer fits or this doesn't fit choice, and move on. So you don't have to like everything. You don't have to stay anywhere. You can always move on.
Yes, absolutely. You can. And I know some people will hear this and think, oh, easier said than done. You should be in my shoes right now. That's a fair take, but at the same time, we can't jump into another person's shoes.
No.
We can just tell them, what our experiences were with something similar. And
as you said earlier, Charles, it's then to make that decision look after themselves, isn't it?
It is. But we're always here to help. Answer questions. Talk about what we did. Maybe point in the right direction of other resources. But you're absolutely. Everyone must make their own decisions. And of course, I recommend that they be well researched and decisions. So.
Yeah. Thank you for your time, Charles. It's been, as always, absolute pleasure talking with you.
Thank you very much, and have enjoyed the rest of your week. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you both for having me here. Really appreciate it.